Alright, so in the past we've talked about one-dimensional lookups using index match, and we've talked about two-dimensional lookups on a data table using index fed by two matches. What if you have three-dimensional data? Well, let's get into what a data cube looks like. Fundamentally, what's going to happen is you're going to have a table that'll have x variables, y variables, right? So it's a very familiar data structure, x and y, and we'll just feed this some garbage data or whatever, right? Some random number. Alright, two-dimensional table, right? Insert a row. Well, what happens with three-dimensional table is then we have some w, or let's go with a z as the three-dimensional data, right? So we have, let's go with 4 z values. So we have table z1, z2, z3, assuming I type that correct, and z4. Alright, now it's a little annoying having these random functions updating every time, so we're just going to copy and then paste the values over the top so those rand functions go away and it's just some number then, right? So this is what a three-dimensional data cube looks like as a structure. Now it's going to be kind of like a Rubik's Cube, right? We got the first layer of 3 by 3, second layer 3 by 3, third layer of 3 by 3. Here's my Rubik's Cube analogy, completely breaks down because I've got a fourth layer, right? So, how do you look up data in here? Well, let's talk about the most complicated formation of the index function. All right. Because index, this bottom row here, right, actually can accept 4 kinds of input. Now the first one is going to be a reference selection, and we have the row number, the column number, and the third one is the area number. So again, we're going to be feeding it the row number, the column number, and the area number is going to be which of the layers in your data cube that you're looking at. Now, in order to feed that reference, you actually have to be using a pretty specific syntax, right? So if we call up the Excel help, and it'll take forever to load, and we get it in. Please wait while immediately. Well, that's not any help. At any rate, so we have to feed it references, right? Well, it actually has to come in its own parenthesis here. We feed it area 1, area 2, area 3, area 4. Alright, so this is the most complicated part of how you're going to be feeding this into index. So we'll just fill with dummy numbers here, 1, 1, 1. Alright, so 1300319. So what this is doing is telling us to look in row 1, column 1, and area 1. And this area is going to be in the order that it was fed into this first parenthesis argument in index, right? So area 1 right here. So let's say we want to look at 222, right? 2, 2, 2. 72045. Or, yeah, that's rounding. Right. 2 is the area. 2 is the row number. And 2 is the column number. Sure hope that's 7.20. Oh, there you go. Right number, right? So that is how you do a three-dimensional lookup with index. Now you can make it a little bit more complicated, or you can nest things. So you have input X, input Y, input Z, right? And you can feed those two matches just like you're used to, feeding it input. Let's move these down so that they're not going to be covered when we pull up the function argument there, right? So we'll just feed that again, 2, 2, 2, right? Match And now, because I've got X across the top and Y across the side, but index always accepts the row argument first, our first match is actually going to be Y instead of X. I get those screwed up all the time when I'm doing index matches on my own. So that's something to be aware of. Right, first match. Uh-oh. Oh, I'm telling it to give it... There we go. I'm telling it to give it just a number, so it's trying to find an exact match of the string 2 instead of Y2, right? And we can do the same thing for X. And we're going to go right back to that not applicable error because it's looking for the number 2 when that's not actually one of the acceptable text strings. Alright, see? Now, it's important when you've got your data structured like this that if you're going to be using the row elements on one table here, that you have them named correctly. Right? So for example, let's say I go back and realize that I made this mistake here where I got x1, x2, x2 again, and I fix this to be x3. Well, now if I feed x3 in here, it will accept the argument because I'm looking on this table, but I haven't actually fixed these row titles here. So if you've got a different structure on your data cube where this is an x4 and then you go back to x3 or x3, then you're not actually going to ever get the correct value there, right? It's looking for an A even though I'm looking in area 2, right? And it should be having an x4 there because I'm feeding these matches off of here. That's no good. And then, you know, if you have a match for this, I mean, where do you get the match array? You can cheat a little bit and feed it a forced array entry, right? So you use your curly brackets, and we have some text strings, Z1, not with an apostrophe here, because that'll raise all kinds of trouble, Z2, Z3, Z4, right? Close the array, tell it's another exact match. Here we go, and again we're going to get that error. Well, let's feed it x3, right? And let's fix that, so we're going back to x3. Oh, I should be feeding it a z value in my z input, huh? There we go. So we're saying we're taking this and we're feeding our index into area 3, right? Matching this into 1, 2, 3, and we're going to be feeding it the match for your x3 and then your y2. So we're going to be looking x3, y2, z3. Sure hope that's 0.233, right? No, yeah, there we go. So if we want to look at that from stepwise, go through, use evaluate formula, and you can see how it's working right there. See, index, it's looking, got those 4 areas, and it takes those in, and then it's going to run the match, finding our y in that range there, assessing as 2, match x3 in that range there. Right, S3, and matching this E20 value here into our manual array of Z1, Z2, Z3, Z4, and feeding it 3, right? So we're going to be looking in the 3rd area, and it's going to be giving that value right there. So that's how you do a 3-dimensional lookup with index, and then you can feed that match and match and match, or you can just use input the integers directly and all kinds of stuff. And again, I just want to reiterate that your row and column labels and then your 3-dimensional depth label for your cube data, it all has to be matching on each axis, right? Because if you don't, then you're going to be having a lot of trouble getting the data to work. Because honestly, Excel designed for two-dimensional data, so doing a three-dimensional cubical lookup like this isn't really the best way or the natural way for Excel to do things. But that's how you do a three-dimensional lookup in Excel using the automatic built-in functions. So you can use that to go wow all your friends at work. All right.